Hey Marissa, hope you're doing well. Mr. Riggs here with your first video edit for your 9/11 essay. Great job, by the way, on this, and thank you for uploading it to your Google folder. And this is exactly how things will work for the most part throughout this semester. Is you'll continue to upload to your Google folder, and I will make a duplicate of that essay or project and edit that, and then provide you with a brief video on some of those edits. And like I said in workshop, I'm not going to go through every edit. I respect your time too much, but I would recommend that as you make your way through these videos, there will be one with each project. As soon as you go through it, please go through the rest of the edits, though, the ones that I don't get to, just to make sure you see maybe what was removed, what is recommended, a note that I made, and just be processing all this, right? Because there are those important 3 C's that are going to make sure that these workshops go well. That's, the first C is create, which you've done here with your essay. Second C is critique, which I'm providing you. And then third is collaboration, which is the part of the conversation where we work back and forth with the edits and thoughts and questions to make sure you're growing as a writer. So that's kind of the scoop on that. Without further ado, let's just kind of go ahead and get started. Like I said, great first essay here. I'm not sure if you've written other ones this year for Sunday, but this is a great start for these workshops. You tackled one of the hardest things with any kind of essay, which is continuity of thought, which is you start off with one strong thought up here, and then you actually maintain the same idea all the way throughout to your concluding paragraph. And you did that wonderfully here, so kudos to you. A few other things that you did very well. You have a very clear and clean writing style, which honestly is probably the hardest thing to come by as a writer, so great job there as well. Few things to look at here that could very well just be fixes for the next one, or perhaps they're habits that we're going to work on throughout the whole semester. But with your introductory paragraph, there are always 2 things that they need to do, and you probably know this, but they need to hook the reader and make them curious to actually get started with any kind of writing project or prompt, right? And then you need to give them what I call a brief roadmap, kind of let them know where they're headed, not exactly, but give them a rough idea. Now, I have to tell you, you actually did this really well. But I think that there are some things you could do next time to make it that much better. So this first sentence here is a decent sentence. It's crazy how much the world has changed since September 11th, 2001. 2 recommendations here. Words like crazy, adjectives like crazy, are a little bit more like, they don't feel like slang, but it's what we would call like an idiom. It's this language we use that is just they have so many definitions, right, that it can be hard to pin down what you mean sometimes in an essay. So, it's obviously fine to use when you're talking with friends and text messages and Facebook posts and Instagram and all that. But for an essay, it's best to ask yourself, is there another word here that could be more descriptive, that could really let the reader know more of what I mean? And again, the reason I bring this up is just because there are so many definitions with the word crazy. There's slang with kind of someone's mental fortitude. There's something being extreme, like certain sports are crazy, certain hobbies are crazy, etc. Right? So it has so many meanings, the reader could get lost. And so it's hard to have that right away. So I would maybe recommend another adjective there. Also, when we start off with sentences with it is and then something after that, it's called a cleft sentence, C-L-E-F-T. And all that means is that with this pronoun it at the beginning, it is not really attached to anything. So, if I asked you, what noun is it replacing? What noun is the pronoun it replacing? There really isn't one here. We might think that it's pointing to or replacing the world or maybe crazy, but if we think about it, it's actually not, just kind of this filler word. So one strategy for next time is when you want to start a sentence off with it is something or it is crazy, and especially if it's at the beginning of a whole essay, right? there where we don't know anything we're talking about yet. Make sure you put the subject that you're talking about at the beginning of your sentence. So, the emphasis here is really that the world has changed, right? Since September 11th, 2001. There's nothing wrong with just saying that right away. Now, if you want to clarify how the world has changed, feel free to say that. Say, the world has changed in many ways since September 11th, 2001, or the world has encountered lots of transition, or, just make sure that the reader hits the subject a little bit sooner, and you may not have that problem with this adjective so early on. And then a great job here. One quick word. When you have this list here, airport security, military training, aircraft terrorism, investigation, laws, and many more. Great list, but it's technically a fragment sentence, which again, a fragment sentence is, it's a series of words that have some logic to them, but if there's no verb, it's technically not a sentence. And if it's not a sentence, it does not deserve its own period and beginning capital words. So one thing you might be able to do here, if you have another sentence like this in a future project, is to say, it's crazy how much the world has changed since September 11th, 2001. Many of these changes include airport security, military training, etc., right? A few extra words, maybe there's a shorter way to do that, but just to kind of show you, I think this is what you meant, but we can't just give a list its own sentence, because for it to be a sentence, again, it has to have a verb. So one thing maybe to commit to memory, but the rest of this was fine. You didn't have a single fragment sentence after that. I want to make sure I'm watching my time here. Okay. One thing here is when you have an example that looks plural, right? So identification requirements. It can be easy to lead that off with these plural pronouns and words such as a few or many or ways, or just other nouns that show that something's plural. But technically, identification requirements is a singular thing that has changed, right? Now, inside there are many things, but it's actually one change that has happened is identification requirements, right? Now, if you wanted to pull in identification requirements, aircrafts and flight staff, then you could say a few of the many ways are identification requirements, aircrafts, and flight staff stuff, right? So, but just kind of make sure we're watching out that that we're not getting tricked by things that look plural but are actually singular here. Let's see. Okay, so one other little trick I'm gonna let you know about right here. Phrases like there are or there is, and then if we have like an adverb like so afterwards, technically we actually never need a phrase like that. Very rarely can we use them and they're helpful, but more times than not, they're just kind of this soft wind up to words that actually begin to make sense, right? So then we have, there are so many horrible things that could happen on a flight, right? I did a strike through because I wanted you to see this. What would happen if we just started with many horrible things can happen on a flight, right? See how it gets to the meaning of your sentence just a little bit quicker? I know that might seem kind of silly saying, oh, it's just 3 words. But if we do that a lot within an essay, those 3 words really add up. And it helps the reader immensely to be able just to get to what we mean to say when we mean to say it, right? So that's another thing. One other note while I'm thinking about it, because I'm seeing these few little notches here, and I see it here. We actually don't need to start every new sentence with 2 spaces. So feel free, have the freedom to start with just 1 space afterwards. If you have any questions about that, let me know, because that's kind of a rule that has changed over time. It may change again in the future, but for right now, sort of the rule, quote unquote, is that we can only, it's okay to have just 1 space after a sentence. Everything else is pretty typical. So it's either removing something that was redundant or removing an extra space that didn't need to be there, or the occasional words that helped kind of clarify what you meant to say. And so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of cap off this video here, because everything else is pretty straightforward. So like I said, go through, check out these edits. see what I removed, work them into your own thought patterns, and we'll talk more on Tuesday about what to do with these edits. Okay, Marissa? But again, great job, and I'll see you on Tuesday.